Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And if it's okay with you, I'd like very much to continue on with our journey, our exploration with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2021. And that brings us to that title, which has been designated by Criterion at spine number 1076. This is a film from 1932. The filmmaker is Dorothy Arzner, and the name of the work is Merrily We Go to Hell. This is the work from 1932, and it is from the great artist Dorothy Arzner, and it stars, among others, Sylvia Sidney and Frederick March as Joan and Jerry, respectively. They are our two main characters, our main protagonists in this really wonderful film, Merrily We Go to Hell. I think if we were to try to focus in on the plot or story structure, the essence of this plot, if you will, I think we could focus in on the fact that this is, or it could be said to be, a type of romance comedy drama that is focusing in on this couple, this pair, our main protagonists, Joan and Jerry, and their story about how they meet, how they fall in love, how they get together, how they get married, and what are the various situations and circumstances and consequences of their particular relationship and how it plays out all the way to the very end. And so in this particular, say, adventure of emotional relationship, we get, for example, certain scenes of their meeting. There is a really charming screen chemistry that is existing between these two characters almost immediately, and that I think develops quite nicely and quite in a lovely manner in some of the comic scenes, the comic, say, comedy of errors, comedy of manners types of situational humorous scenes that are balanced very well with other scenes of, say, drama and somewhat emotional consequence. And so we already have here, I think, a well-balanced set of scenes and situations, again, all revolving around this particular relationship between these two characters, Joan and Jerry. So in that way, it is, on the one hand, and I think very triumphantly so, a type of romance comedy drama with these great performances and great screen chemistry at the heart and center. It is also, and I think associated with that, and running parallel with that type of reading of the film, it is also very much, or to maybe borrow the element of drama, the romance comedy drama element. There is the word drama in that. And I think one of the great sources and one of the very powerful sources of drama that comes in this film is the fact that it also deals in a very striking way with the concept of marriage and the concept very inherently of what it means to essentially be in love with each other in a state of marriage during the early 1930s, especially when there are other, say, temptations outside of one's marriage. And I'm speaking specifically of what could be termed as being, quote-unquote, a modern marriage. In fact, during the course of the film, one of the story or plot or character developments is the Frederick March character, Jerry, and how he is dealing with his particular, say, emotional emotional state and certain very maybe relationship difficulties that he had prior to his relationship with Joan. And this brings in the Adrienne Allen character and Claire and his past relationship with her and what that means and what the consequences are for that in his current marriage with the Sylvia Sidney character, Joan. And so this brings in, as I say, this idea of quote-unquote the modern marriage. And the idea essentially is we have a state of these two married people, but they are, in essence, free to see other people outside of their marriage. And when I say see, I mean on a very intimate level. They can see and meet other people while being married. And so this forms one of the very interesting plot dynamics of the film moving forward, is what are the emotional stakes and consequences of this particular union status on this particular couple. In other words, we see them, in essence, meeting other people, and they seem to be okay about it, but are they really? And we see then, therefore, the emotional and indeed physical and mental effects and consequences of this particular status on these two characters. And it really, I think, leads to some very dramatic conclusions in terms of that discussion. So that's one way where I think the drama is very much heightened and intensified from a state of, say, the plot or story dealing, as I say, with this core relationship that forms the very heart and soul of this film. And yet another way in which this film, I think, really relies or really presents in such a masterful and skillful way its dramatic tension or its significant dramatic consequences as it plays out with these particular characters is with respect to the role of drink, the manner in which alcohol is depicted in this film, and maybe to be even more specific, alcoholism and the addictions to alcohol and drink, and what the emotional and physical and mental consequences are in respect of this particular state or situation that is being depicted. Now, I'm speaking perhaps, for example, of the Frederick March character, the Jerry character, because we see right from the start of the film that he is a character that is drinking, and drinking quite a lot. And that is part of his character background, we later find out, because maybe there might be a reason, a specific reason of emotional turmoil and relationship difficulty from his past that could be the reason why he is drinking so heavily in the first place. But in any case, we have a film that I think does a really skillful thing, which is it manages to balance at the same time, on the one hand, the way in which I think drinking scenes inherently are able, and in cinematic terms, are able to have a type of comic or levity aspect to it when they are presented in a certain way. And indeed, some of the ways in which some of these aspects are presented within the film's world is comic, and it's very lighthearted, and it turns into this idea of a comedy of manners or maybe miscommunication that leads to further miscommunication. This is oftentimes the heart of certain types of cinema comedy, and it's, I think, handled in this film quite well and quite tastefully on the one hand. And on the other hand, at the same time, the film does acknowledge the seriousness of this over-reliance, over-dependence on alcohol, to the point of it being perhaps even a type of addiction that has very drastic and in some instances very negative consequences for the characters concerned, and specifically the Sylvia Sidney character and the Frederick March character. And how the film handles that, it does it in a very direct and also in a very subtle way. It shows us directly the consequences of this in, I think, very clever and very easily to understand ways, and how this is taking its toll, very much so, taking its toll on their relationship, and how this then leads to the possibility of certain characters, and for example, the Frederick March Jerry character, how this leads to certain possibilities of whether or not he wants to change, and if he wants to change, how he is able to change, or perhaps there are other circumstances that arrive that maybe prevent that change, or perhaps even encourage his current state of, say, drinking to the point of real extreme excess. And this also brings in, for example, turning back to the conversation of the plot, it brings in the element of Jerry's relationship with other people, in particular the Claire character, the Adrian Allen character. And so this is, I think, really well handled. It's such a skillfully handled thing in this particular film. The way it handles the concept of marriage, and also the way it handles the concept of drink, and also then in this context how those two elements are directly related to the depiction of this particular marriage in, as I say, a story or a film that is having aspects of humor and comedy on the one hand, but also it takes these really serious dramatic turns, and becoming, I think, so to the point where the viewer is really involved and is intrigued by what will happen next. And so this is, I think, a well-balanced, exciting and invigorating work. In conclusion, with this particular discussion, I should say that this film, I think, has a really wonderful blend and mix of various, say, lines of plot or thematic concern. We have the romance, comedy, drama aspect that is very much centering in on the romantic screen chemistry between these two characters, and they are very likable, and we root for them, and we want to support them, and we want to see them happy, and so that then forms the basis of the tension and the dramatic tension, as well as the charming aspects of their romance and the comic and lighthearted aspects that are associated with that. So it's a very charming film in that regard. And also it does focus in, or does not shy away from, certain themes of, say, dramatic seriousness in the context of a discussion, a very frank discussion of marriage and what it means, especially with the context of these people in this time, the early 1930s, and also the context of drink and alcohol and what that means and what those specific consequences are, going back to the romance, comedy, drama aspect, what those consequences are for this couple and how they will deal with that, if they are able to deal with it at all, in this really fascinating work called Merrily We Go to Hell. The Criterion Collection has released this at spine number 1076, Merrily We Go to Hell, and it is purported to be based on a 4K digital restoration, of the film. And it looks great, it sounds great, and I've never had this film in any form before, and so to have it like this by Criterion in this manner is really wonderful, and it was a great opportunity to further explore and engage with the work. Speaking of which, also in terms of exploration and engagement, the Criterion Collection, as per its custom, also has included a number of supplements. Now, the supplements themselves, in terms of the amount of them, might seem somewhat small and slight, so that's okay if one feels that way, and indeed I feel that way too, in terms of I wish there could have been a little bit more provided. However, that being said, I should just describe what they are, because I think what they are themselves indicates a very high quality of what we're getting. So first of all, we do get a video essay which is approximately 26 minutes. And this is a video essay by Carrie Beecham. And she is a well-known film scholar and expert and critic, focusing in particular on the works of Dorothy Arzner. And she's an expert in this, and she provides some very essential background in the life and biography and childhood of Dorothy Arzner, and certain details that are really fascinating about that. For example, how Dorothy Arzner was a very intelligent child, and she excelled in certain aspects of her academics and studies. And also there are certain biographical details of her family life as a child growing up that perhaps might have had or might have some kind of effect or consequence on Dorothy Arzner as an artist, as a filmmaker, and the types of concerns that she has making her own films, such as Merrily We Go to Hell. And so this is a really interesting and essential background into, or certain biographical information and details on Dorothy Arzner's childhood and life leading up to her entry into the film industry. So for anyone who is being introduced to the world of Dorothy Arzner for the first time, I think this type of background is essential, and it's a great jumping off point for further exploration and discovery of her life and works. But that's not all, because Carrie Beecham, in the same video essay, then focuses in on Dorothy Arzner's career, and then specifically on this film, Merrily We Go to Hell. So this video essay then serves as a type of what one might call mini commentary of sorts, because Carrie Beecham speaks about the certain aspects of the plot and theme and production detail and background in a way that is so illuminating and essential and wonderful and lovely. Her insights are absolutely fascinating. She reminds us, for example, that the film is based upon a novel by Cleo Lucas, which is called I, Jerry, Take Thee, Joan. She also reminds us about the timing of this particular release, about how this film came in a very interesting era. It was it's known as a pre-code film, and this is in reference to the Hays Code, which was not strictly enforced at the time of this film, 1932. So therefore it's known as a pre-code film, and that is suggestive of the fact that it therefore might be taking certain elements, or certain it might be focusing on certain types of story that aren't necessarily let's say created by means of trying to adhere strictly to some kind of code of moral behavior in cinema that was imposed or that was otherwise created during the Hays Code era of cinema, as it were. And so this is prior to that strict enforcement, so to speak. So this seems therefore to be very significant in some of the ways in which this film is, say, depicting drink, and also depicting the idea of the quote-unquote modern marriage, which is what I was speaking about earlier. So that's a very significant point that Carrie Beecham reminds us of very much so, which is a very significant point. Also, she reminds us that this is still the era of Prohibition, but it is 1 year before Prohibition was ended. And so perhaps there is some kind of there is a way in which this film is depicting drink. It's depicting drink in a way that is that has certain implications and certain consequences. And those consequences are indeed somewhat negatively portrayed. And so, and there is an interesting way that drink is itself its own character. So it's interesting how Carrie Beecham mentions this. So these 2 points seem to be very significant in that way. And then she goes on in this wonderful video essay to talk about how how the cast, we have a really interesting, exciting, vivacious cast, talking a little bit about the backgrounds of their workings, production history, Frederick March and his professional relationship with Dorothy Arzner and how he appeared in a number of Arzner works, and also about Sylvia Sidney and what she brought to the production and to the film as a whole, and how it was a very, very unique, essential, and exciting presence that she brought. And also the mentionings of Adrienne Allen, who plays a very key role, as I mentioned earlier, of Claire. There's also a very interesting, a very brief appearance by Cary Grant, and so Carrie Beecham makes mention of this. There are some interesting details about the there's a scene involving an Episcopalian priest, which involved the marriage ceremony, etc. And so there's an interesting production detail that she provides about that particular aspect. And so that's an example of how this video essay is a type of mini commentary. It is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it makes me so wish that Criterion might have asked Carrie Beecham, perhaps, for example, to provide a full feature-length commentary for this film as an optional audio option. That would have been absolutely splendid. But be that as it may, the fact that we still get this video essay in this manner is great. So please check out the video essay. Carrie Beecham. Her last name is spelled, by the way, Beauchamp, but my understanding it's pronounced Beecham. So it is 26 minutes. It is essential, absolutely essential for an introduction into the world of Dorothy Arzner, as well as a great commentary, a selected commentary on Merrily We Go to Hell. That's not all, because then we get a 46-minute, approximately, documentary or say video contemplation essay of sorts from 1980. This is called Dorothy Arzner, Longing for Women. And this is by filmmakers Katja Raganelli and Conrad Wickler. And again, I say this is from 1980. So this is made shortly after Dorothy Arzner passed away. And so there is this feeling in the air of this film, which is essentially about the filmmakers capturing in real time or in the moment actual locations, actual places that were important and significant to the life of Dorothy Arzner, and also meeting and having interviews one-on-one with certain people that were in one way or another that were significant in the life and times of Dorothy Arzner. So in that way, it's a type of cinema contemplation of Dorothy Arzner's life, using places and people that were once associated with the life of Dorothy Arzner. So in that way, it's this lovely contemplation and this lovely almost maybe a type of cinematic ode, if you will, to the spirit and to the memory of Dorothy Arzner. It's a lovely composition in that way. It also, as I say, it does focus on certain films of Dorothy Arzner. It doesn't focus specifically on, say, it's a detailed discussion of Merrily We Go to Hell per se, but it's focusing more on Dorothy Arzner, the person, and also the filmmaker as a whole. And so in that way, I think it serves as another great way into the world of Dorothy Arzner and who she was as an artist and also as a person, or hints or indications of the type of personality and the type of character traits that she had as an artist and as a human being, and talking about childhood as well, talking about some of the significant aspects of her childhood, and also her life as she was an artist, and then her life in her final years. So there are some really touching and poignant ways that the film is depicting the life and times and spirit and memory and legacy of Dorothy Arzner. So in that way, I think it's really lovely. So please check it out if you can. This is Dorothy Arzner, Longing for Women. So that's it as far as the supplements are concerned. So as you can see, in terms of number or quantity, that's not a lot. And in fact, the supplements, in terms of their running time, 26 minutes and 46 minutes respectively, we, as a consumer of these products, one might have liked to have seen more supplements. I would have loved to have seen maybe more supplements on, I don't know, certain aspects of the film, or maybe how it played into pre-Hays Code or Prohibition era type of cinema, etc. Or maybe, as I say, it would have been great to have a feature-length commentary from the Dorothy Arzner expert. That would have been splendid, absolutely splendid. But be that as it may, what we do get, though, is, I think, really essential and valuable and well worth checking out. So it is somewhat small in number, in quantity, but in terms of quality, we get very stellar, high quality level supplements, in my opinion. Then we have the package presentation as a whole, and this artwork is, I think, very clever indeed. Let me say that the artwork here is it's credited to art directors Eric Skillman and Sarah Habibi, and illustration Sonia Kretschmar, and designer Eric Skillman. I think this is so clever, and this is a specific scene in the film, a specific shot in the film that's depicted in this lovely artistic rendition. And the font is great and exciting, and it's carried through in the insert, and I'll talk about that momentarily. But this is so clever because, let me just do this. The disc is like this. Now, inside we have the disc, and the disc actually has a continuation of this artwork motif that we had on the front cover. Now, if you know the film, you'll know that this is actually a type of joke punchline that is associated with the specific scene. And so what we have is not just the depiction of the scene as the front cover artwork, but we have, if you open it and the disc itself, the disc has artwork on it. And that artwork is in essence, a kind of punchline of the joke that is at the center of the heart and soul of this particular moment. What a clever way of presenting this artwork design from Criterion. I love that. That's so clever. Well done, Criterion. Well done to the artists who thought up of that lovely design. And then, as I say, the design continues on with this insert. It's not a booklet. It's not a staple booklet. It's a poster type, and it's a smaller poster type than one might see. One might see larger poster. This is a very small thing, and so I wish there could have been more in terms of this particular fold-out or insert design. I really wish there could have been more here, which is because we've seen how Criterion can really provide a lot of, say, stills and essays and the like. But in any event, we do get this essay, which is called Gingerbread, Cake, and Creme de Menthe. And this is by Judith Mayne. And this is another great essay. So I'm not so keen on the actual small poster fold-out design itself, but what's here in terms of the essay by Judith Mayne is great. This is really great. This is one of the best essays I've read in a Criterion release so far this year. It is so well balanced in terms of giving us information about Dorothy Arzner and her background and her career, giving information about her working relationships and her concerns and her philosophies almost as an artist. Or not almost, but her philosophies as an artist, right? Because a lot is made about how Dorothy Arzner is a female director in the Hollywood film industry, and this is one of the ways in which she is seen as, say, a pioneering film artist of that particular generation, of that particular era. And this essay touches on that aspect of her career, and indeed some of the other supplements, the video essay and also the 1980 ode to Dorothy Arzner's memory and legacy. They also touch upon this in a very important way, and this is a significant, important aspect of the works of Dorothy Arzner. But what is also so great about Judith Mayne's attention, and also the attention of the other scholars of the supplements, is that they focus also, and I think really primarily, on the art itself and how the working relationships are very important, and the professional relationships, for example, the relationship, as I say, professionally between Arzner and March, and how they work together on a number of occasions, including Merrily We Go to Hell. So this is brought about, I think, in a really clever and a very important way. And also going back to this idea about how Dorothy Arzner is an artist who is a female filmmaker in this particular industry at this time. Her films are also dealing with female characters or women who are dealing in one form or another with their own status or their own place in society as women, or their roles, or the roles that seem to be imposed upon them as women, or expected from them as women. And Dorothy Arzner, in her films, in a very clever and almost indirect way, is also dealing with these in, say, terms of comedy as well as terms of drama. For example, in this film Merrily We Go to Hell, we do see ways in which, for example, Sylvia Sidney's character, the Joan character, is dealing with, or is trying to work out, her place as her place in the society and what is expected of her as a wife in this particular point in time, on the one hand, versus how she feels individually and emotionally, especially after all the things that are happening to her, which from certain viewpoints are quite unfair indeed. And so this type of discourse or conversation, I think, is had, but it's had in a way that is, I think, it never calls attention to itself in a way that makes it, say, balanced one way or the other. I think it's therefore very nuanced, and it's very, as I say, indirect, but it's skillfully done that way. I really want to emphasize that. It's so skillfully done that the messages seem to be there, but it also can be interpreted in other ways, say on a direct entertainment value or as a Hollywood cinema aspect, etc. So it can be interpreted in many ways, but the fact that Dorothy Arzner, as an artist, seemingly having those concerns, is also able to embed those extra layers of possible interpretation into these scenes, not just as a female artist, but also as an artist. This is one of the key aspects of the greatness of her work. And this is cited by Carrie Beauchamp and also by Judith Mayne and others here. So this is something that really is brought out so well and described so well, and in this essay, for example. And then she goes, Judith Mayne does, into other details about the character developments, the character traits, themes, certain specific lines of theme, and leading up to their conclusion in the film Merrily We Go to Hell. There is also one very interesting detail about how the film differs from the original source book, right? This is based upon the book by Cleo Lucas, which is called, again, I, Jerry, Take Thee, Joan. The essay does reveal a certain very important way and striking way that the book has a certain scene, but that the film does something completely different. And so, and actually it has certain consequences about how the film exists in history vis-a-vis the original source novel. And so I think, and it maybe has indications of how this film is also ultimately many things. It is a film that might seem to be dealing with very serious themes and concerns about marriage and alcohol. It is also a romantic comedy drama, and it is also a type of Hollywood film. So this change that Judith Mayne is indicating, I think, is very much suggestive of that type of Hollywood film dynamic that this film also operates within. So overall, an excellent essay. Now, I do suggest that you read the essay after having watched the film, not before, because it does reveal certain details that I think might be worth reading, as I say, after watching the film. But once you've seen the film, please read the essay. It is fantastic. So that's it, I think, regarding my discussion of this Criterion release of Merrily We Go to Hell. As I say, it might seem to be somewhat light in terms of supplements and supplements inclusion, also the way in which certain aspects of the release are presented, and I have mentioned that before, but there are some really strong elements to the overall package itself, and I draw your attention to the real high quality nature of those supplements themselves, and also there's a really clever way that the art is presented. And the film itself. This was a wonderful delight and charming experience, and I'm very happy that Criterion is releasing this, and together with its other Dorothy Arzner release. I think this is a lovely introduction of this film into the Criterion Collection physical media catalog. This is Dorothy Arzner's work, Merrily We Go to Hell. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. So until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I very much appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.